Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Podcast Special Edition, where I'm going to do my NBA Offseason bold predictions for every team, and at the end I'll provide 5 bonus predictions. So without further ado, here we go. First up is the Atlanta Hawks. My bold prediction for them is that they'll bring back Al Horford on a 4-year, $112 million contract. I just think that the Hawks are building towards something and they want a veteran adult in there. And Al Horford, why not go back to Atlanta? I know there's talk about the Pelicans, there's talk about the Mavs, there's talks about the Clippers, but I really think that Atlanta's the sleeping giant in all this, and they'll bring back Al Horford. The Boston Celtics signed Malcolm Brogdon away from the Milwaukee Bucks and overpay him to like a 4-year, $100 million contract that Milwaukee doesn't match because they have to bring back some other dudes. So the Celtics obviously have a need at point guard, and I think that they really like Brogdon, and Brogdon's somebody that Brad Stevens would like. So why not? The Brooklyn Nets. Here we go. Signed Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Yeah, you heard it. Vegas has the Nets as the favorites to sign both players, and those moves that Brooklyn made at the draft and that deal with the Hawks says what they think is going to happen. And the Nets built themselves a good foundation with Jared Allen and Karis LeVert and some other young guys they have there. I think that they move on to D'Angelo Russell. We'll get to where I think he'll land in a couple of minutes, but I think Brooklyn acquires Irving and Durant, and they become the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. So there you have it. The Charlotte Hornets re-signed Kemba Walker to a 5-year, $200 million max contract. I think that Charlotte cannot afford to lose an asset for nothing, and Kemba goes back there, and he is eventually overpaid, but gives the Hornets fans some hope a little bit in bringing back the player that they've had there for a long time. The Chicago Bulls bring back Derrick Rose. I don't know, I just have a funny feeling that a theme of this offseason is going to be reunions like I have with Al Horford and the Hawks. I see it here with the Bulls and Derrick Rose. They can use a veteran guard in there. He'll help the young kids like Kobe White and Chris Dunn and all the other young players that they have there. And I think they want to build towards something again and once again become an attractive place for free agents. The Cleveland Cavaliers trade Kevin Love to the Los Angeles Clippers for Montrezl Harrell, Jerome Robinson, and a 2020 top 10 protected first-round pick. I think the Clippers strike out on Durant, and they strike out on Kawhi. I'll get to what I think happens with him a little later. So instead, they overpay for one free agent. I'll get to that in a minute. And they acquire Kevin Love from the Cavs, who I think the Cavs secretly want to get rid of, even though they signed him to that extension last year. I just think that they wanted to keep an asset and then eventually trade it after they made the signing of it, kind of like what the New York Giants did with Odell Beckham Jr. last year. The Dallas Mavericks extend Kristaps Porzingis to a 5-year, $175 million contract. They are poised to do this. I think they have to do it. They gave up so much to get Porzingis and even took on 2 bad contracts with Tim Hardaway Jr. and Courtney Lee to get this done. So the Mavericks, I think, are under some pressure, but not a lot, to re-sign who they hope to be is the Robin to Luka Doncic's Batman. Next up is the Denver Nuggets, who I think will acquire Bradley Beal from the Washington Wizards for a 2020 unprotected first-round pick, Gary Harris, Juan Hernan-Gomez, and Bol Bol. This is a sleeping giant in the offseason. I believe they were in play for Anthony Davis, but obviously nobody could top that Lakers offer. So instead, they go with the second best available player via trade, which is Bradley Beal, who I think a backcourt with him and Jamal Murray would be absolute deadly. The Detroit Pistons re-sign Stanley Johnson to a 4-year, $70 million contract. You got to be honest, Stanley Johnson has not lived up to expectations so far in his NBA career, but I can see them doing this. Just like that Miami committed to Justice Winslow. I could see Detroit doing that with Stanley Johnson here too. The Golden State Warriors re-signed Klay Thompson to a 5-year max contract. That is a no-brainer. I think that is the biggest lock of the offseason by a mile. Although I did once upon a time think that Klay would be the second starter joining LeBron in Los Angeles, but then they traded for Anthony Davis, so that kind of talked me out of that. And plus, I think that they might spread their cap space around a little bit. We'll get to some Lakers predictions in a few minutes, but I think the Warriors have to re-sign Klay Thompson at all costs to keep Stephen Curry happy there and to keep that backcourt together for the rest of their basketball careers. The Houston Rockets trade Clint Capella to the Boston Celtics for Robert Williams, the 2020 Milwaukee Bucks first-rounder, and Semi Ojeleye. I think that the Rockets want to shake things up, and I think trading Capella is something that they're open to doing for the right offer. I think that the Pelicans were in play, but I think that the Pelicans didn't want to give up the number 4 pick for that. So I think that the Rockets will look to Boston, who has a need at center, and grab Clint Capella from the Rockets. I'm talking about Boston. And then the Houston Rockets get a couple assets back for him. The Indiana Pacers signed D'Angelo Russell to a 4-year, $140 million contract. Yes, a lot of people think they're going to sign Ricky Rubio, but the ones that are rumors don't normally pan out all the time. So I'm going to say that the Pacers are the team that overpays D'Angelo Russell to the point where Brooklyn doesn't match. Obviously, because I think Brooklyn's getting Kyrie and Durant. The Los Angeles Clippers signed Jimmy Butler to a 4-year, $140 million max. I think that the Clippers know that they're missing out on Kawhi and Durant, or they secretly know that. And then they end up overpaying for Jimmy Butler, a guy that they really wanted last year, but were unwilling to part with some assets to get him. And instead, they go the other way and gain more assets by trading away Tobias Harris. So I think they get Butler because they have a need at the wing position to go with their guards and their bigs. So an offseason of Jimmy Butler and Kevin Love, a lot of people look at it as a disappointment because a lot of people penciled in Kawhi Leonard to the Clippers as a done deal. But it's not terrible to go with what they already have. The Los Angeles Lakers bring back Rajon Rondo. I think that Rondo is somebody that wasn't happy with that situation last year, but he's somebody that LeBron James likes, and that's why I think that Rondo ends up back there. He's a good veteran leader. He's somebody that has been in a lot of big games before, and I think that they won't overpay for Rondo like they did last year. I think they're going to spread their cap space around, but I just think Rondo is a small part of it. The Memphis Grizzlies trade Justin Holiday to the Lakers for a 2022 second-round pick. I think that the Lakers continue to acquire some role players, and one of them being Justin Holiday, in which they need some wing depth after the tradings of Brandon Ingram and Josh Hart, if you consider him a wing player. So they take on Justin Holiday's salary from the Grizzlies. The Miami Heat take on J.R. Smith's bad contract plus some picks. I think that the Cavs are dying to get rid of money. I have them dumping Kevin Love, and now I have them dumping J.R. Smith as well. And Miami now has a lot of players that can play on the wing, which would open up a Pandora's box of other things they could do. So I think they take on the J.R. Smith contract, and I believe it's an expiring as well. The Milwaukee Bucks re-signed Chris Middleton to a 5-year, $175 million max contract. I think that this is a move that the Bucks have to do. He was a big part of what they did last year, so I think that re-signing Chris Middleton is a big deal for them. The Minnesota Timberwolves signed Seth Curry to a 4-year, $80 million contract. I think Seth Curry is going to be one of the more overpaid free agents. You hear Minnesota in the mix for some free agent point guards, but I think they strike out on the bigger name, so they go with a role guy in Seth Curry. Although, I got to admit, I was tempted to predict Miami taking on Andrew Wiggins and somebody else taking on J.R. Smith, but I don't know who wants that horrible Andrew Wiggins contract. The New Orleans Pelicans acquire Hassan Whiteside from the Miami Heat for Jackson Hayes, Etuan Moore, and a 2020 second rounder. Hassan Whiteside is somebody that's very polarizing, and I think Miami's dying to get rid of him, and obviously the Pelicans have a need for a rim protector, and Hassan Whiteside could do that, and he won't be asked to do much with the Pelicans other than protect the rim. The New York Knicks obviously strike out on their big targets, so they decide to say, hey, we'll take on some bad contracts with some picks. So I have Charlotte dumping Nick Batum's bad contract to the Knicks, which has 2 years left, and I believe player option for next year potentially. And they also attach a 2020 top 7 protected first rounder. Why top 7? Because I think Charlotte re-signs Kemba Walker. And I was going to say top 10 protected, but I think the East is going to actually be solid. Again, obviously you're going to have Brooklyn, you're going to have Philly, Boston, Milwaukee, and Indiana with Victor Oladipo back. Who knows what Miami does. So Charlotte's not a guarantee to make the playoffs. So I'm going to say they make it a top 7 protected pick. And I think the Knicks will do it, because I think the other reason why I think it's going to be a top 7, or why I see it like that, is because I think Charlotte's just absolutely dying to get off of this bad contract. The Oklahoma City Thunder signed Marcus Morris to a 3-year, $50 million contract. The Thunder have a need at a combo forward position. I think Marcus Morris would be an excellent fit there. The Orlando Magic re-signed Nikola Vucevic to a 5-year, $150 million contract. Vucevic has had some career years the past 2 or 3 years, and I think that the Magic want to keep him around, even though they have some young centers on their roster. But Vucevic is somebody that's developing himself in a nice all-around game, and don't forget he made the All-Star team a year ago. The Philadelphia 76ers re-signed Tobias Harris to a 5-year, $150 million contract. I think that, obviously, they lose Jimmy Butler, so they get desperate and overpay for Tobias Harris, who I think was a great fit in Philly. The Phoenix Suns re-signed Kelly Oubre to a 4-year, $110 million contract. I think that Oubre is somebody that the Suns really like, and I think that's a huge reason why they dumped T.J. Warren to help re-sign Oubre. So there you go. The Portland Trailblazers re-signed Enes Kanter to a 1-year, $15 million contract. You ask why? It's because they are not sure how Jusuf Nurkic will come back from that injury, so why not re-sign Kanter to a 1-year contract? The Sacramento Kings re-signed Harrison Barnes to a 3-year, $70 million deal. I know there's cases against them re-signing Harrison Barnes, but they're a team that needs combo forwards, so why not bring back Harrison Barnes? And I think he's somebody that knows what it's like to be in a big game, obviously, with the Warriors those past few years, and just a grown-up kind of person in the room to help the young players develop there. The San Antonio Spurs signed J.J. Redick to a 2-year, $30 million deal. I initially had a trade here for the Spurs, but I talked myself into signing signing a premier wing free agent. They need a wing to go with their young guards and their big guys. Although they did draft Keldon Johnson, but he's more of a forward wing. the Spurs need guard wings, and I think J.J. Redick would be a big help. And I think the Spurs are going to be motivated after what they saw with the Raptors and Kawhi Leonard. So why not overpay for J.J. Redick? 2 years, $30 million seems fair for Redick, but I think they'll make some interesting moves this summer to make themselves a contender in the suddenly wide open West. The Toronto Raptors re-signed Kawhi Leonard to a 1+1 contract, which means obviously a 2-year deal, but an out after one, similar to what LeBron James did in Cleveland before he went back to left again, and Kevin Durant did that with the Warriors too. So I could see Kawhi doing a 1+1 for Toronto, bring back the championship team they had, maybe in a random addition here. So I think he goes back to Toronto as they try to defend their title. The Utah Jazz take on Evan Turner's contract from Atlanta for Royce O'Neal in the 2020 second rounder. Why? Because the Jazz need some guys on the wing from a forward standpoint, and I think Evan Turner would be a nice bench piece for them. And obviously Atlanta, I think, wants to bring back Al Horford, so why not dump the Evan Turner contract to Utah? And last but not least, the Washington Wizards acquired Jay Crowder from Memphis for a 2020 second rounder. I just think that Memphis wants to get rid of some of those veterans that they got in the Mike Conley deal. You'll see where I have Kyle Korver going in a couple minutes, but I think that Memphis just wants to get young and build around John Morant and Jared Jackson Jr. And I think they try to shed that Chandler Parsons contract, but they fail. Bonus predictions. DeAndre Jordan to Brooklyn to join Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. This has been speculated a lot, and I think Jordan will be somebody that comes off the bench for them because they already have Jarrett Allen as their starting center, or maybe they trade Jarrett Allen to try to clear the cap room. Patrick Beverley to the Milwaukee Bucks. I have the Bucks losing Malcolm Brogdon, so why not bring in like a spicy guy in Patrick Beverley? Kyle Korver dealt to the Toronto Raptors for a second rounder. I think that Korver replaces Danny Green, who I have going to the Los Angeles Lakers on a 3-year, $40 million deal. I could see something like that. Trevor Ariza to the Knicks on a 1-year deal. I think the Knicks are going to overpay some guys on 1-year deals to see if they could build trade value to try to trade him. They did that with Mario Hezonja last year, but that didn't work out. It worked last year with Ariza in Phoenix, and then they traded him to the Wizards. So I could see New York doing something similar. Brook Lopez goes back to Milwaukee. I think the Bucks love Brook Lopez and was happy with him. So I can see them signing him to a 2-year, $35 million deal or something like that. And Ricky Rubio to the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavs are in play for Kemba Walker. I don't think they get him. So I think they'll bring on Ricky Rubio on a 1-year deal to roll over some cap space. So that's it for my off-season predictions. Tomorrow I'm going to come out with my NHL off-season predictions.